On today's episode, four-time world champion Nicole Mericle. Welcome to the OCR Report Podcast, brought to you by the OCRReport.com. We are the only podcast to focus exclusively on the elite sport of obstacle course racing, from Spartan to Tough Mudder to the OCR World Championships, and wherever the elites are racing, we are there. My name is Will Hicks, and this is the OCR Report. Welcome back to the OCR Report Podcast. Thank you for listening. My name is Will Hicks. I am thrilled to be with you today. In a minute, we're going to talk with Nicole Mericle. Nicole is a four-time OCR World Champion. She has won the OCR World Championships 3 times, and she won the Spartan World Championship back in 2019. I knew that. I don't know why I was thinking about it. I knew it. So we're going to talk with Nicole in a minute. Nicole raced in Palm Beach, the first race in the Spartan 3K series. She also raced this past weekend in Big Bear, but she qualified, but did not race in the finals. We're going to talk to her about why and what happened there and kind of the behind the scenes of that. Before we start, you can email me, will@theocrreport.com. You can text me at 619-485-2726. You can follow the OCR Report on Instagram at the OCR Report. And you can become a member of the OCR Report through Patreon. For less than $5 a month, you can support the sport you love. We talked about this a little bit last week when we talked with VJ. It's a new thing for this year, the OCR Report Patreon. We are super excited about all of the live streaming opportunities we have with Spartan, with Tough Mudder, with the OCR WC, with the World Championships, with DEKA, with the Grit Games, and we're looking to add more too. It's important for the sport. Any legitimate sport, the biggest competitions are televised, right? And if they're televised, they're live streamed. And so it's important for us. It's important for Spartan. It's important for everybody to have races broadcast. And so we're excited about that. We are doing 1 to 2 races. Some months we're doing 3 races a month this year. Toward the end of the year, we actually do more. In OCR World Championships, we do 4 races in a week. World Toughest Mudder, we do 24 hours of racing. But our goal is to get a race on TV every single weekend during the race season from March to November. Every single weekend. When we get to 2,000 members, we will be able to do that. So if you would like to be part of the first 2,000 to help us bring live streaming every single weekend, we would love to have you as a member. Go to the OCRreport.com Go to patreon.com/theocrreport. Patreon. Patreon.com/theocrreport. And you can also find a link to it in our Instagram and in our show notes here. I would love to have you as a member. Speaking of members, let's shout out some of our members. We want to shout out about 10 members per episode. Kyle Pimenta, Thomas Peterson, Brent George, Sarah Hernandez, Dustin Needham, Steve Clavel. Is it Steve Clavel or Steve Clavel? Steve, let me know, and I will get it right next time. Brett the T-Rex Melks, Cass, and Grit Fitness. Grit Fitness, very excited to have them on as a member. They are the host of the Grit Games this fall that we're going to televise or broadcast on the OCRreport.com/ I keep saying, you know what? I should run it through everything through that website, huh? YouTube.com/theocrreport to watch the Grit Games. The Grit Games will air on August 13th. Very excited to partner with Kenny and the Grit Games down there in Texas. So thank you to those members and to all the members. We're going to continue shouting you out in episodes as the podcast continues this year. If you're like, where does the money go? Like, what are you guys doing? Every single dollar goes back into the sport. Literally every single dollar. It goes to pay for live streaming expenses. It goes to pay for race photography. It goes to pay for equipment. It goes to pay for software costs. Literally every single dollar goes back into the sport. So, and I know it's money. Like, we're asking for like $5 a month, $4.99. There's different plans. There's $10 plan. There's $20 plan. But I realized that's money. That's dollars that you went to work for and you sweated for and you spent time away from your family for. Like, asking for someone to like, hey, thanks for your $4.99 a month. We don't take that lightly. That's a big deal. And I know it's $5. Like, $5, okay. But it's money that it represents time. It represents part of your life. And we don't take it lightly. Every dollar that is entrusted with us, we take very, very seriously. So I want to say thank you to those 10 members we just named, 10 last week, and all the other members that we're going to continue to shout out and recognize. Thank you for trusting us and for supporting the sport that you love. If you'd like to be a member and support the sports you love, go to patreon.com/the OCR Report. We would love to have you as a member. Before we talk with Nicole Mericle, let's read some iTunes reviews.
5 stars.
5 stars.
5 stars.
5 stars.
5 stars.
5 stars.
5 stars. 5 stars.
No reviews today. That's all right. I would love to have you leave a review, though. Open your Purple Podcast app on your iPhone or iOS device. Search for the OCR Report. Scroll down and click Write a Review, and I will read it on a future episode. Or you can go to lovethepodcast.com/OCR, lovethepodcast.com/OCR, and you can leave a review there if you don't have an Apple device. But I would love to read that on a future episode. Today on our show, Nicole Mericle. Nicole is no stranger. She's been on our show several times. World champion. She's consistently been at the top of the sport for, I want to say at least 2019. That's when she won her Spartan World Championship. 2018, for a good half decade, give or take a global pandemic, she has been at the top of the sport. She suffered an injury 2 years ago. We talked about it a little bit. That kept her down until this year. Her recovery had some hiccups. She talks about it a little bit. But she's come back strong this year. She won the first race in the Spartan 3K series in Palm Beach. She finished third in the DEKA series race in Anaheim a couple weeks ago. And she was on her way to a strong finish, a strong performance in Big Bear. And we talk about everything that happened in Big Bear coming up. It's time to talk with Nicole Mericle. Let's go to the phones. Nicole Mericle is a 4-time OCR World Champion. She recently returned to the course after a nearly 2-year recovery from injury with a win, the first race in the Spartan 3K series in Palm Beach, and third place at the DEKA series race in Anaheim 2 weeks ago. Always happy to talk with Nicole Mericle. Hey, Nicole.
Hi, it's great to be here.
Nicole, it was good to see you in person a couple weeks ago in Anaheim.
Yes, that was a treat.
It was a fun race. So before we start, Nicole, I kind of want to catch the listeners up. Kind of a little context to our conversation. You recently came back from a serious injury with a win at Spartan Palm Beach, the first race in the new 3K series. And then I saw you a couple weeks later in Anaheim, which was a couple weeks ago, and you finished third at DEKA. Another two strong performances coming. Your first kind of comeback. Don't call it a comeback. I know. Then this past weekend, you raced the second race in the Spartan 3K series in Big Bear, California. Tell me about the race in Big Bear.
All right. So I guess to set the stage, it has been 2 years since my injury now, and I have not had a straightforward, simple progress back to sport. Back at the first 3K race in Florida, I was still having some apprehension surrounding my knee. And it was just like going into that race was still slightly nerve-wracking. Since then, jumped into DEKA Fit. That was a totally new event for me. And I had a lot more confidence in my knee going into that race. And then, brought that again into the Big Bear race. Had much more confidence in my knee, still kind of building things back to some degree, but I'm feeling like way, way closer to 100%. And I've had good training, and maybe I'm not quite as strong as I have been in other points in my career, but running fitness wise, I've definitely progressed back to the point where I have been before. So going into the race, I would say in general, I had a pretty good level of confidence in my fitness, at least. And, but I will say that especially the week leading up to the race, I was having some things going on in my personal life that really affected my sleep. It really affected just my stress levels. And by the time I got out to Big Bear, I woke up that morning, had like a little bit of a headache, a little bit of sore throat, just kind of feeling a little bit off, like I was possibly getting sick. And sorry, still getting over being sick. So woke up that morning, and even flying out there kind of had that confidence that had been building up was kind of gone, I would say. So morning of, I'm trying to kind of shake this feeling off. Like maybe it's not a big deal. Maybe I'm not really getting sick. I go for a jog and kind of start to feel increasingly worse throughout the day. But again, like I've competed for, like 20 plus years now. And so I've competed when I'm sick. I've competed when there's stressful situations going on. And I've always thought I've actually have a good handle on being able to like leave things on the start line and proceed forward the best I can. So this whole time kind of expecting that once I get to the race venue, once I get to the starting line, that all those external things are going to melt away and I'll be able to focus in and execute. So drive up to Big Bear. And I don't know if you've done that drive from LA, but it is windy.
Scary drive. Yeah.
Yeah. And get up to Big Bear. And I'm like, whew, that was, got a little car sick in there, but, showed up to the race and really, again, like not really something I've experienced before, but as soon as I got to the venue and went up to the little practice area where they have a laser gun set up, they had a couple sandbags set up. I just broke down, and it was, again, something that like has never happened to me in like a public setting and a race setting. I'm really not like a crier to begin with. And so here I am, the race hasn't even started and I am like, being like consoled by Steve and some of the other athletes. And so from that moment, I was like, something's clearly off. And, like I was just trying to kind of like pull it together, like, again, kind of waiting for like, well, like that moment the gun goes off, like everything else usually goes away. There's like a simplicity that happens when you race that it almost doesn't allow for anything else to really get into your brain. So I was still hopeful that would happen. And I don't know, had this been a different format, then I could see that maybe it would have actually been in some ways better. I'm not sure. But given the format of 1K prelim, 1K semifinal, 3K final, the way that runs, the strategy is really to run as conservative as possible in those 1K rounds. And so my mindset going into those 1Ks was actually, it was almost like it wasn't a race mindset. It was almost like I need to be really relaxed and I need to just do as little as possible to progress to the next round. And so went in with that mindset, started the race. And because of that, had no worries about people being in front of me. To some extent I knew kind of where I needed to be to advance, but I will say it was a very different mindset than this is a race. I have to optimize every second of this course. And so I think because of that, it almost kind of fed in to this already negative mindset and just lack of confidence I was having to begin with.
So you did well the first heat. The second heat, you advanced. You did it as good as you needed to do to advance in the first two heats. You finished in 6th place in the second heat. The top 6 advanced to the finals.
Yep.
But you did not race in the finals.
That's correct.
Tell me about that decision between the second heat and the finals.
Yes. So again, kind of felt a little bit off, I would say, during the 1Ks. Again, it wasn't exactly like I felt like I was racing really hard. It was more like kind of like I was going through the motions, and in a lot of ways I was, I just, was putting in like as little effort as I needed to advance. And just, didn't have this like fighting mindset. So I get done with the second round, and everything felt, very comfortable. Besides the double sandbag was definitely like, no matter how easy you go, that double sandbag was really hard to get through. And I think it was hard for everyone. I think, I can only really speak to my individual experience, but for me, I've been through the double sandbags before. I've seen them. Where I am right now in my training, I am a lot lighter. I'm a lot weaker than I have been in the past. And some of that is just based on what I have been doing in training, what like my knee has been able to tolerate. And some of that I think is kind of what I've had going on, has kind of led to being a little bit underweight unintentionally. But I will say that the sandbags felt exceptionally hard for me. It's not like they were a walk in the park. And if you can kind of like, you can go hard on monkey bars, you can go easy on monkey bars, right? Kind of the same for like a rope climb or like a crawl. And picking up those 2 40-pound bags, there was like only one option, and it was hard. So definitely that was a struggle to get through, but the rest of the race all was like very, in my comfort zone. So kind of finished these efforts, and I'm sitting there, trying to prepare for the final. You don't have a ton of time. The way that they run them, it's like 10 minutes between qualifiers. And I think we had like 15 or 20 minutes until the final. So not a ton of time. And I think like, as I like reflect on this, mainly what was going through my head was, I just went out there and ran at like an effort level that is like easy to moderate, right? But I know for the final, I have to get out there and I have to run hard, because like that's the real race. right? So whatever happened in qualifiers doesn't really matter as long as you advance. But for the final, I have to be on, I have to run hard. And again, never been in this situation before, but again, like I just broke down, and it was definitely, for lack of a better term, like I felt like I caused a scene. Like, people were like being very, very encouraging and very helpful, and it's, just coming around me and being very kind, and cheering me up. And I think one of like, it was kind of funny almost. At one point, this guy came up and he said, "Hey, like, you did make the final," because he thought that I didn't know. He thought that last time they only took 5. Like maybe I was like really upset because I didn't make the final. Sure. And so he came over, like he thought he had like this good news for me. And I was like, I know, thank you. It's not that.
Just trying to help.
And so, yeah, very, very much trying to be helpful. But, and so again, I feel like it wasn't like one thing. It was like, obviously everything that I just have going on right now that led to that point, because, again, I've had races that have hard elements in them. I've had races where I show up and I'm feeling under the weather. I've had races where I'm dealing with, other life stresses. And I've been able to always get through those before. I've never dropped out of a race unless I had an injury. And so it was really bizarre to look around at my friends and say, I'm not racing through the final, and having them like go tell the officials, like, she's not starting. Everyone was like, are you sure? Are you sure? Like, didn't want me to make a poor decision just because I was like in the moment, and I was obviously very emotional. And luckily, like after I did make that call, I went and changed and I came back on the course, and I, watched the race and cheered people on. And I was like very at peace with my decision.
You said the words poor decision. You said you were at peace with it. Mm-hmm. Looking back, about a week, so learn a few days really, look back on it. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about your decision?
I still feel like it was the right call. I don't know. Everything happened very quickly, and it happened in definitely like a very like emotional state. But, and I guess it's like, I don't know how I would have done, obviously. There's questions of, how would I have handled carrying a double sandbag in the context of actually running harder in between. And there's things like that I'm like curious about. Like, this was the last race was at sea level, and it was different obstacles. And this one was at altitude. It was it was a little bit hilly. It was, had a lot of different obstacles. And so obviously, it would have been interesting to see how my fitness relayed to that course, how, my knee responded. And I just like won't know those answers. But in terms of being happy with my decision to sit out, for like where I was in that moment, and for, moving forward, with my training and just, my whole like mental outlook, I guess, then yes, I'm like definitely at peace with it. I'm like very happy for the athletes that were in the final and competed and did well. And it was like great to watch that. And I would say it was almost better to have that experience, because instead of racing and having a miserable experience, I got to watch other people race, and I got to watch, all of the passion and the excitement that goes into racing. And I didn't have to be in that place of like misery, I guess. Yeah.
When I heard that you did not race the final, my first concern was injury. Like, is there's nothing injury related, or it was the body's good?
Yes, the body's good. And I guess that was, even though I would say, again, I was in like prelim mindset, it's a different type of running. In some ways I got on obstacles, I did dismounts, there's uneven terrain, some things that I still hadn't seen exactly before. And so even just that experience was really great for my knee. And so to come out of that with absolutely, feeling no apprehension during the race and having nothing negative, impacting my knee afterwards is like definitely a positive.
Reading some of your social media since the race, it sounds like you weren't a big fan of the double sandbags. And obviously talking about them now, they were hard. Obviously, it's not a surprise. But you've mentioned, I've seen you mentioned a couple times, not a fan of the change to the double sandbags.
So it's an interesting topic. I don't even know if I would say that I'm not a fan of having them in the 3K in general. Although that is definitely something that is worth discussing, I would say, because I guess, yeah, in broaching the subject of the sandbags being in there at all, what I find most interesting is looking at past races, obviously, and kind of comparing things. So what's interesting to me is that in the Spartan history, right, we have the beast as kind of like the ultimate race, where we had, what was it, like 30, 35 obstacles, something like that. And so it's been a while. It's been since 2019 since there was a double sandbag, but for many years there were. And if you take the time that it would take to do a double sandbag carry over the time of the entire race, it would only make up like 3 to 5% of a race. Then if you look at the 3K this weekend, so from my data, at least, it took about 2 minutes to do the sandbag, and the whole lap was about 10 minutes. So now that's 20% of the race is just one obstacle. It's just that one heavy carry. And so that was pretty just interesting to me to hear, or to, kind of realize that when it just matters, like whatever obstacles are put in there matter so much more, especially things that take longer. Obviously, they become a bigger percentage of the race. So, again, I wouldn't say that they don't necessarily belong at all, but I think it's interesting to make just the, what's the word?
Sure. No, it is I was looking at the times from the Palm Beach race and looking at the time from Big Bear, and they're like 2 to 3 minutes. Well, now it is elevation, and it is,
there's a lot there.
There's more. It's not just the same race with different obstacles. I could see the point that Spartan's always kind of done this though. Like, the series in years past was like different distances, like it's sprint, beast, super, different obstacles, different. Killington is always a crazy, if they have the series that Killing, like there's always something kind of wild going on there obstacle wise with monkey bars over water and climbing up. And, but you're right. It is more than any other single obstacle percentage wise of the course. It's a big thing.
Yeah. I think that's what kind of is most interesting to me, is that even if, the rig has changed, the monkey bars, whatever, the percentage of the race is still going to be quite small. I guess if you're talking penalties, then possibly not, but heavy carries, in a 3K definitely take up a bigger percentage. And so it's just a different game basically, which it's already a different game because it's a 3K and it's this crazy new format. There's a lot of things that are different. But it's just something that's like, it's just interesting to kind of see that and note that.
Something some people noted online was that the sandbag was a late change. Like it replaced the barbed wire crawl, I think, at Big Bear. And that would the thought change or the thought process change at all if you knew it was coming, or does that being like a last minute scratched obstacle, does that change outlook at all, do you think?
Yeah. So I would say that I think so. I've talked to a lot of athletes who raced that day, obviously. And what I feel like has been the consensus is that at the very least, athletes would have appreciated more of a heads up. And to me, it's important to give athletes a heads up with some major change like that, because then athletes can make a decision for themselves if it is an appropriate race for them or not. And then they can also train for it. So, yeah, you can argue like surprises have always been a part of Spartan, and there's a degree of unpredictability. And I think that's all valid. And there's hopefully still a place for that in Spartan races, even with the professionalizing and the standardizations that have been the new reality. But again, I think for something that has such like a huge, it's such a huge part of a race like this, and for something that it really matters it matters for not only for like how things for performance, but also for injury risk. Sure. Something like a heavy carry really matters, being able to go in with proper technique and with proper training. So that's kind of mostly what I think myself and many other athletes are really frustrated with, or would really like to see, is just a little bit more heads up so that we can train, we can prepare our best, and we can, really ultimately like put on a good show and not get injured.
You're talking about affecting the outcome of race. A big, I don't want to say gripe, a big comment. And I personally felt this, the spear throw. A lot of races came down to whether you made or did not make a spear throw for a long time. And you can train that and practice it. And people will argue this. People are like, oh, it's just, you can make it every single time. And I'm like, okay, maybe, but for an obstacle course race to come down to something like a spear throw always seemed kind of silly to me. And I don't know if you want one obstacle to make or break a course. I'm going back, as we're talking out loud, I'm kind of thinking, I'm going back and forth. I feel like heavy carries have always been a part of Spartan, but at the same time, you don't want one heavy carry to determine who's first place and who's fifth place. So,
yeah, I guess it would be interesting to know exactly what the whole thinking is that Spartan has for this race format. Like what is their goal, and what is it to find the fittest overall person? Is it, to pick out different athletes based on a race that caters more to strength, or caters more to running or upper body? And that very may well be what their objective is, but we just don't know.
I don't think Spartan would ever, I've talked to some people over there. I don't know the exact answer to that question. I don't think they would ever be like, oh, hey, we really want, this one athlete to do well at this course. I don't think that's ever a conversation, but I do think, putting on a good show, like obstacle course racing, watching someone just like watching a marathon, unless you're super, super into it, is not generally like good TV, right? I think they want to have a good show. They want to have, a good live stream, a good coverage. They want to, they want, when you sit on the couch with your uncle, you want to watch, like, who's never watched an obstacle course race, you want something exciting to watch. Mm-hmm. So what are your thoughts on the laser pistol? That was kind of controversial when it first got brought up like a year ago ish. And then it seems like a lot of the controversies kind of died down, other than like they should tweak it this way or tweak it that way. What are your thoughts on that?
So that's actually pretty funny. In the first race in Florida, the entire square, so not just like the bullseye, but the entire target was on. That it all counted if you hit it.
Sure.
But for some reason, I didn't know that, and a lot of the women's field didn't. It seemed like a few of the guys did, and so going around on every lap, I was like increasingly surprised that I got it so fast. And by the end, I was like, wow, this must be like a lot easier than I thought
really
it
good
was.
shot.
And I'm like, yeah, I guess I'm just like way better than I expected. And then I come to find out that like, yeah, they had increased the range to include the entire target.
Pointed in that direction. And
Yeah. So, yeah, but this next race in Big Bear, they narrowed it down to the black bullseye. And I would say my experience with it was not that dissimilar. I still got it pretty quickly. I didn't hear a ton of people complain that they were there for a really long time. I think that Mark Batras timed out once. But then I don't remember any of the women taking like a substantially longer time. I know Ida is very new to it. And so I think maybe her learning curve is slightly behind as well, but it didn't seem to be a factor in the race. It didn't seem to be a make or break, which again is kind of, I don't know, like I think that's kind of what we wanted, because it's kind of like the spear where it's, you know, I hate to say it, but it's like, it is slightly gimmicky, and it's not like a test of fitness. It's a skill, which is, you know, possibly has a place in the race, but it's such a departure from all the other obstacles that I think it's easy to be like, oh, I don't want that to determine the outcome of the race.
When people talk about like, oh yeah, the spear throw, it's about like controlling your breathing and getting your heart, and like it's a skill. It's just like anything. I'm like, yeah, well, like making eggs is a skill. Like I'm not going to put a grill out there, make you crack eggs with one hand. And
yep, like poached eggs. Not everybody can do that.
I can't do that. I can scramble them and over easy. That's about it.
Yeah.
I asked some of my OCR Report team if they had any questions for you. One of them asked, do you think about when you're getting over an obstacle or off an obstacle, is it in the back of your mind about how you dismount, how you land? Is that still something you carry with you?
There was, I would say generally no, but I think it's almost, it's subconscious, I would say, because I'll do something, and then after I've done it, I'll think, oh, wait a second, that was weird. Like that was me being a little bit apprehensive, but it's not something that, you know, it's not like I get to the end of something and jump off and I'm like, ooh, like I don't like hesitate. Although I think there was one monkey bar dismount that I did kind of like take a second more, but yeah, it was, I think like one of the most telling things was in Florida. I was just stepping off of I think the slip wall or the A-frame, you know, just like a descending stairs essentially. And I jumped off of my right leg, but, and normally you would then land on your left. You know, it's like a small little hop, like a really tiny hop.
Sure.
But what I ended up doing was, I jumped off my right and I landed on my right. I did like a one-legged jump off this A-frame thing. And that was one of those things where after the fact, I was like, well, that's a little bit funky.
Sure.
Yeah.
I hurt my knee in 2018. I had to do some rehab. And I remember you're in like an office building, right? And they're just stretching you. And I remember the lady, after a while, she had me stand on a mat that was about 1.5 inches thick. And she's like, okay, with both feet, you're going to stand on this and you're going to jump to the ground. And it was terrifying. 1.5 inches. I was terrified. I was like, I can't do that. Like, anyway,
your body just like doesn't know how.
Yeah, the body was strong enough, but my brain was not ready to do that yet.
Mm-hmm.
Someone else asked, can you explain the differences between dry tooling and ice climbing?
Yeah. So ice climbing is on ice and dry tooling means that you're using ice tools on either rock. So no ice involved, just rock, or you could be on like a man-made element that is also, it's like plastic or metal, something that you would see in a climbing gym. The origins of dry tooling definitely come about from mountaineering and ice cooling and ice climbing. So basically, if you're climbing an ice climb or if you're doing a mountaineering route that's predominantly snow or ice, you might encounter rock as well. And so it became, a relevant skill to have to also know how to use your tools on dry rock. And then somehow from there, it kind of diverted into its own little sport. And so now there's complete crags that are just dedicated to dry tooling. Typically they're not quality rock enough to be rock climbed. So it'll be something that you only use tools on. You actually don't use your hands on it. And then there's the whole sport of dry tooling, which is synonymous with ice climbing. So if you look at like the US ice climbing team, for instance, it's a little bit confusing because you could be on the ice climbing team, but you could actually only be competing in like the lead technical competition, which doesn't involve ice at all. Or you could actually be in speed climbing, which is like a complete ice sheet. But regardless, so if you compete in ice climbing in a technical competition, then what that means is that you typically walk up to like a man-made structure and it has all these different man-made holds on it. And you're ascending using your ice tools on the holds. And there may be like one little block of ice that's just kind of thrown in there, just to, be fun, basically.
Well, there you go, Jason. You asked. So you won Palm Beach. No points for Big Bear. Kind of with your experience this past weekend, looking forward to Poconos, the third race in the series. What are your thoughts for Poconos?
Ooh, that's a good question. I did get some points for this past race, actually. I don't know how many, but sixth place gets some points. And since I made the final, I was able to just solidify that sixth place by default, essentially. But so moving forward, there's honestly a lot of questions in my mind. I have an upcoming trail race. I'm doing Broken Arrow in June, and that is really my focus and has been my focus. So, and I guess what I mean by that is that I knew there's a 3K in Big Bear, but all my workouts have been more geared towards training for the Broken Arrow course. That's not to say that I was trying to train through this race or anything. That's not what I mean at all. I just mean that I don't think that training for a longer mountain course took anything necessarily away from the 3K. So I just don't think it needed to be. I needed to have any more focus on a 3K shorter distance. But so I'm doing Broken Arrow. I'm going to see how that goes, and I will possibly decide from there what my next move is, because there's always been this question of, do I go trail? Do I go OCR? And that still remains. There's a lot of opportunities in trail. and it's honestly overwhelming. It's it's like a really hard choice. So I think I'll be in Poconos, but I do want to find out more about the race, and honestly, it really will dictate how I train, because again, right now I'm mostly focused on trail, and so and I'm a little bit lighter than I normally am, and that just it just doesn't work well for OCR, and it definitely doesn't work well for doubled sandbag carries. So if they're going to do that again, even if it's just like a possibility, then I need to make sure that I have a lot more muscle mass on me, and then I'm quite a bit stronger.
So Poconos is July 14th. That's not a ton of time to train heavy carries.
No, there's definitely enough time to build muscle there, and there's enough time to just get acquainted with loading your body with heavy weight and learning how it feels and learning better technique. Because that's one thing, I wasn't able to get both of the sandbags onto my shoulder. I carried them in front of me, which was a pretty inefficient way to do it. But that's all I could do. I don't even know if I could clean an 80-pound barbell right now. So it's a high ask for me to clean, an object that's harder than a barbell.
It's like wiggling around on you. And I was looking at pictures from the Big Bear race this morning, and for every, 10 women, there were 10 different ways they were holding those sandbags.
Yep.
So I'm sure there's an optimum way, but it was, there are a lot of different things going on there. Do you think the obstacle makeup for Poconos will determine whether you race Poconos?
I think it will play. I think it'll play into my decision. I know it will play into the decision for other women too. I've already received multiple messages of people that were planning to go to Poconos, but now they don't want to, or now they're thinking about it. I've also heard Allie Tippett, she wasn't going to go to Poconos, and now she is. So I definitely think it goes both ways. But yeah.
I don't like to hear that you're even thinking about optic. I don't know if you heard, I talked to BJ Jones last week before, and it sounds like, and this is all subject to change, I'm sure, but it sounds like this year is his focus on OCR hard year, and next year he's moving out of OCR into DEKA and High Rocks next year.
Yep.
And we've lost, Rebecca Hammond and Lindsay Webster, and we didn't have you for 2 years. And I hope you have to make the best decision for you. I don't want to try and put my finger on the scale, but we would the sport would miss you.
Well, thank you. I hope that I guess to make it clear, if I don't do Poconos, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to do OCR. That's almost like the point that there's still so many other things to do.
Sure.
There's OCR WC, and there are other Savage races. I don't think I think the rest of the Savage series conflicts with other races that I have, unfortunately. But it's there's enough options that it's still a hard choice. And for me, as someone who is still very mindful of coming back from injury, and I am still building back strength, and I am still building back confidence in my knee, I do have to be a little bit more choosy in the races I go to. So it's got to be, what's that?
We will see you at OCR WC?
Yeah, that's the plan. Yeah. Yeah. For me, when I look at races, it's got to be something that I'm excited about. It's got to make financial sense. And it's got to be something that, I can reasonably train for with a low risk of injury, I would say.
What about the other big races, Spartan World Champs and World's Toughest Mudder? I put that bug in here a couple times. I don't think it'll ever.
I will not be at World's Toughest Mudder. Not as a racer, at least. Right now, I want to see I really would like to go to the Greece Trifecta Championships again. Do some standard Spartan races. Yeah. Yep. It's a really fun weekend. It's one of the most international races I've ever been to. Just like a really great weekend. It's really well done. And so I think that OCRWC Spartan World Championships is definitely on my schedule. I haven't been to Abu Dhabi. So that will be interesting. And the only other thing is that I don't know what they're going to do with these 3K races. And I do think that like that does play a role, with like what we saw this weekend. The double sandbag was 20% of the race. But that's also, it wasn't the only carry. There's also the bucket. And that was kind of adds up to more like 30 to 40% of the race ended up being time-wise heavy carries, which I actually consider myself like a pretty good heavy carrier. But it is like, once it tips over a certain weight, it becomes like my, my ability does go down. So that means that I have more things to work on.
Okay, wrapping up here in 1 minute. Last question.
Yeah.
If you could wave a magic wand, how would you have changed the Big Bear course?
Ooh. Oh, that's hard. I guess. I mean, I feel like it's too, I can't just say take out the double carry because that's not exactly exciting. But I think I would have liked to see a more balanced course in terms of, throw in a twister, throw in a beater, throw in something that kind of like shakes up the obstacles a little bit more.
So you're saying leave in the sandbags, but just add twister or beater?
Oh, I mean, yes, I guess. Cause like ideally I would have just like Spartan to have announced 2 months ago that there was going to be a double carry.
Sure.
That's ideal situation. I'm not saying that it should have not been there, period. I'm saying ideal situation, Spartan just kind of like gives the athletes a heads up. Yeah.
Nicole, do you have any sponsors or anything you want to plug?
Yeah. My sponsors this year are SIR, Phyto Performance, which makes a really great beet supplement called Alt-Red, and an immunity supplement, which is totally redesigned as of like a few days ago. I'm also sponsored by ProTech Athletics, which has all kinds of massage tools and braces and things like that. And Honey Stinger, which has delicious honey products for sport performance.
Nicole, how can people follow you on social media?
I'm most active on Instagram at Nicole DM.
Nicole, any last thoughts on Big Bear or anything else?
I don't think so. Just hope that people continue to come out to Spartan and other OCR races. And, if people are interested in the sport, especially women who might have questions or, about anything, training, how to get into the sport, I'm your girl. Send your questions my way. And I just hope that maybe anyone listening to this can also, find something out about, little insight into things that happen with athletes when it comes to mental health, and know that it's okay to sometimes have bad days and it's okay to talk about it.
Nicole Mericle, thanks much.
Thank you.
Special thanks to Nicole Mericle for preparing this episode. Well done, Nicole. Come back anytime. Got that world champion golden ticket to the show. What do you think? Let us know in a comment on Instagram or in a review on iTunes. You can leave a review on Spotify. Spotify is easy. You just click number of stars. 5 stars. Join the OCR Report as a patron. Patreon.com/the OCR Report. I will talk with you soon. Those spend time with someone you love.